Hi, and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today is the 4th of May, and we're talking about the Grammys, which is a music lovers festival.
今天我们这篇文章谈的是葛莱美奖，那我们的标题，中文标题是葛莱美奖音乐人的盛典。
It's interesting that we're calling it a festival because, in fact, it's an awards ceremony. But I think festival could apply to it in that a lot of events happen all around the Grammys. What you see on TV is like the tip of the iceberg. All the other parties and events and meet and greets that happen around the Grammys are another whole deal, and that really could be called a festival.
好 ，festival 通常用来表示庆典啊。那但是葛莱美奖呢，其实主要是一个颁奖典礼。但是从另外一方面看呢，就是在葛莱美奖颁奖还有在评选期间，其实有很多很多各种各样的活动啊。所以从这个角度看，你也可以把它称为一个 festival。
So let's read the article and then go through it line by line and let you know how it works. There are few awards ceremonies that get more attention than the Grammys. This annual ceremony, first held more than 6 decades ago, recognizes outstanding achievements in the music industry. The trophy that is presented to winners is in the shape of an old-fashioned record player called a gramophone. The idea for the Grammys first came about in the 1950s. People in the recording industry were concerned that musicians, singers, and songwriters were not getting the same recognition as people working in film and television. The movie industry, for example, had been awarding Oscars since 1929, and the television industry handed out the first Emmy in 1949. As the idea for an award ceremony celebrating music became more popular, influential people in the industry began considering a catchy name to rival the Oscars and Emmys. An early favorite was the Eddies, in honor of the inventor of the phonograph, Thomas Edison. However, the organizers eventually chose the Grammys after the invention of the gramophone by Emil Berliner. The inaugural Grammy Awards took place on May 4th, 1959 in Los Angeles and New York City. The following year, the ceremony was broadcast on television around the nation. Since then, Los Angeles has hosted the most events, followed by New York City and other places like Nashville and Chicago. While the first ceremony handed out fewer than 30 awards, the number grew to well over 100 by the 2000s. In the past decade, however, an average of 83 trophies have been awarded each year. Similar to actors, directors, producers, and screenwriters who are awarded Oscars, winning a Grammy is a huge honor for the recipient, ensuring a bright future in the music industry. So, I don't know about you guys, but my main question after reading this article is what is the difference between a gramophone and a phonograph?
很多人可能觉得，那到底 phonograph 跟那个 gramophone 到底有什么差别呢？
Because graph and gram are both about recording information, and phone are both about sound. So these are clearly both words about recording sound. But why is one got it one way and one flipped around the other way? So I did a quick Google, and it turns out we're not the only ones who have this exact problem. Lots of people want to know the difference, and here's the specific difference. When they started recording sound on physical objects, what they did was there was a needle inscribing things in wax, and they discovered that the vibration of the sound made a vibration in the wax, and they discovered that you could copy the wax thing, and then you could play it back by putting a needle through the same track, and it would replay the vibrations, which is an incredible technology. And the most incredible thing about this is you don't need electricity for this. The original music players were hand-cranked. You turned a crank, the wax thing would go around, the needle would go through the grooves in the wax, and it would play the music. And everyone, it was kind of like witchcraft to everybody. We're like, that's my sound, that's my voice. How is it I can hear my own voice? You could record your own voice and instantly play it back before electricity, okay? That's interesting. But, so we still haven't got to the difference between these two machines. Well, you know how when things get invented and people start calling it names and they're not really sure and everyone comes up with similar things that's slightly different and then they call it similar names? That's the exact thing going on here. The only difference between these two machines is one has a wax thing that's in the shape of a cylinder and one has a wax thing in the shape of a plate. Now later on, the wax got changed for plastic.And the plates became the dominant technology, I think because they were easier to store. And those are called LPs. And then also earlier it was 45s and 33s. But we call these by their numbers because that's the speed at which the thing is turned for playback. So you've seen those black discs all over the place because people think they're kind of cool and retro. And so which one is that? That is the Gramophone. The phonograph was these cylinders. And the cylinders, I think, were just hard to store, and so everyone picked the Gramophone.
OK， 好，那刚刚 Angela 老师跟各位解释得很清楚啊，这个 Phonograph 跟 Gramophone 之间的差别。那这两个字呢，其实看它的字根没有什么太大的帮助，因为它们的字根完全一样，所以没有办法帮我们辨认它们的差别。好，我们看到这个 phone 这个字根就是声音的意思。那不管是 graph 还是 gram 都是 write 都是写的意思，就是把声音写下来。好，那这两个到底有什么差别呢？那刚刚 Angela 老师就解释，他说最早我们在录音的那种概念是怎么样，是用一个针在蜡上面呢，随着音波它会留下一些震动的痕迹。那他们后来发现，你如果把它倒回去，重新再让那个针跟着这个震动的痕迹走一遍的话，就可以重新产生那个声音。那这样的一个过程不需要电的哈，那自己它那个针会在那个上面去找那个勾痕哈。那刚刚 Angela 老师用到一个是 grooves 哈 ，Grooves 那个就是勾的意思啊。好，那这两个到底有什么差别呢？ Phonograph 跟这个 Gramophone 的差别是 Phonograph 它就是我们讲的留声机啊，那它常常是这种转盘式的啊，或者是这个圆筒式的一个录音的方法。那 Gramophone 呢，就是我们叫做唱盘式的留声机啊，他们那个唱盘或者叫我们讲唱片，那叫 LP 啊。那以前有分什么45转啊，或者33转的啊。那所以这两个主要差别就是 Gramophone 就是唱盘式留声机，那 Phonograph 我们通常就称为留声机。
Okay, so let's get to our actual article. There are few award ceremonies that get more attention than the Grammys.
好，那get more attention than the Grammys 就是比葛莱美奖受到更多的注目，更多的 attention 啊。那这个是用来修饰 awards ceremonies， 所以他说 there are few 就是几乎没有，所以意思就是很少有什么颁奖典礼 awards ceremonies。好，那它会比葛莱美奖更受到注目啊。所以第一句话就告诉你，葛莱美奖其实是很受注目的。
Now, this annual ceremony, if something is annual, it happens every year. So this annual ceremony, first held more than 6 decades ago, so it's been running for 60 years already, it recognizes outstanding achievements in the music industry. If something recognizes something, it gives recognition to. Recognize has more than one meaning. One kind of recognize, the more common one is you know somebody or something when it's shown to you. It's like, oh, that's Wesley. I recognize it. That's Wesley.
Mm-hmm.
But this recognition is not like, oh, I know that that's who it is. This one is saying, oh, this person is amazing. So if we recognize Wesley for his outstanding achievements in the English industry, we would be giving him an award.
嗯哼，好，所以呢，这个地方我们先介绍这个很重要的字 recognize。这个字呢，它有两个重要的意思，一个就是认得，I recognized him 啊，就是我认出他是谁了。但是 recognize 另外有一个意思就是认可啊，甚至于是表扬、表彰的意思啊。那例如我们可以讲说啊，你某人他工作了许多年，那我们要表扬他一下，就给他一个奖啊，我们就可以说 They recognized her years of service.With a special award 啊，那就是 recognize 是第二个意思。那这里就是第二个意思。好，那我们再来看这个句子，他说 This annual 就是一年一度的，这个一年一度的典礼，然后呢中间插入一个讯息啊，告诉你说这个典礼 first held more than 6 decades ago， 就是首次举办的时候是超过60年之前的事情了。那 first 前面省略了一个 which was 啊，两个一起省略掉了。那这是一个非限定的关系代名词子句，它用来增加资讯 所以先补充告诉你，这个一年一度的典礼大概是第一次举行，大概是超过60年前了。那这个典礼这句话真正的动词在 recognizes， 这个典礼在于表扬或者表彰 outstanding achievements， outstanding 就是杰出的， achievements 成就，它用来表彰杰出的成就。在哪个地方的杰出成就呢？ In the music industry， 在音乐界，所以它是用来表扬音乐界的一些杰出的成就。
The trophy that is presented to winners is in the shape of an old-fashioned record player called a gramophone. So the trophy is the thing that you give to someone when you give them an award. And award ceremonies like to have some really recognizable trophy so that when they, give it on television, everyone is like, ooh, shiny. They're usually gold-colored. So in this case, it's the shape of a gramophone, which is the classic flat record with a speaker above it, with like a cone-shaped speaker above it shape.
好，所以呢，他说 the trophy 就是这个讲座或者奖杯 that is presented to winners， 用来修饰那个 trophy， 那意思就是用来颁给获奖者的这个奖杯。好 ，presented to be presented to 就是颁发给谁的意思。所以颁发给这些 winners 这些获奖者的这个奖杯呢 is in the shape of， 意思是什么什么的形状。所以它是什么什么的形状呢？它是一个 old-fashioned 老式的 record player 唱机。那这个老式的唱机呢 called 它是被称为 a gramophone 就是一个唱盘式的留声机。那它是这种老式的一种这个唱盘式留声机它是第一次使用唱片的留声机那它感觉好像有一个这个像一个有点像冰淇淋桶那样的一个喇叭所以很好认。
So the idea for the Grammys first came about in the 1950s. If something comes about, it means it's around that time that people thought of doing it.
好，所以 came about 在这里就是想到的意思，想出来或者想到。所以 the idea for the Grammys 就是葛莱美奖这一个想法，首先在什么时候被人家想到呢？大概是在1950年代。
People in the recording industry were concerned. They were worried that musicians, singers, and songwriters were not getting the same recognition as people working in film and television. Here's that word recognition again. Recognition, recognize. So they were worried that people weren't getting famous for being singers and songwriters the way that they were getting famous for being on screen. And since singers and songwriters and their work was definitely also going into movies and television, they also wanted their work recognized. They wanted people to know who they were.
好，所以 people in the recording industry 那 recording industry 就是唱片录音业者这个行业，所以在这个从事于唱片录音这个行业的这些人呢 were concerned that to be concerned that 就是他们担心那他们担心什么呢？他们担心 musicians 就是音乐家singers 就是歌手，还有呢 songwriters 词曲的创作者，这些人呢 were not getting the same recognition， 他们没有得到同样的一些表彰表扬或者认可 as 没有跟谁一样呢？那这个 as 当然是跟那个 the same 一起来的所以 the same recognition as 他们没有得到同样的这个 recognition， 跟哪些人相比没有得到同样的认可呢？就是 people working in film and television 那些在电影业或者是在这个电视界工作的这些人他们得到了很多的 recognition， 但是反而在唱片录音界的人呢没有得到同样的 recognition， 所以他们就想到那我们来办个葛莱美奖。
The movie industry, for example, had been giving people Oscars since 1929, which is 21 years. That's a long time already in that industry. And the television industry handed out or gave out or awarded the first Emmy in 1949. Let's talk about handed out. Handed out doesn't necessarily mean awarded. It does in this sentence. But handed out means that you give individual people copies of the same thing. So if I hand out homework to my students, I'm giving one to this student and this student and this student and this student, and they're all receiving the same thing.
So in other words, you're giving a thing or something to several people.
Yes, but it's the same thing. It's copies or iterations of the same thing being given to several people.
好，所以呢 hand it out 或者 hand out 这个片语本来的意思就是发的意思，就同样一个东西你给不同的人那 中文大概就是发的意思，但在这个地方呢，大概我们可以把它理解成为给的意思啊，因为它其实你也可以想，它可能就是像艾美奖，它可能有很多的项目，所以是同样都是艾美奖，它给不同的人啊，所以从这个角度来看，用 handed out 讲的可以讲得过去的啊，就是给的意思。那我们来看到这个句子，他说 The movie industry 就是电影业哈，举例来讲，它 had been 用 had 就是在格莱美奖之前他们已经在做了，所以是过去的过去，用过去完成。那他们已经一直给，而且是过去完成进行式，因为它还在给，所以他们一直给或者是颁发 awarding 在这里颁发这个奥斯卡奖，这从1929年就开始了啊，中间差了21年。然后呢，电视业 the television industry 也发出了第一个的艾美奖，在1949年就发出了。
As the idea for an award ceremony celebrating music became more popular, influential people who can persuade other people because they're looked up to, these influential people in the industry began thinking about a catchy name, because you can't have an award ceremony with a name like the awards for the music industry. Everyone's going to fall asleep. They need a catchy name, something that will grab or catch people's attention. And they needed it to compete with the Oscars and Emmys. Because Oscars is a nice, cute name, and Emmys is a nice, cute name, so they needed a nice, cute name outside of their official title. If you rival something, you compete with something. You could also be someone's rival when it's the noun.
好 rival 这个字呢，在这里是动词，它的意思就是与什么什么匹敌啊。那甚至于你可以把它翻译成媲美的意思啊。所以他们希望有一个名字，一个 catchy name， 动听好记的名字，能够媲美奥斯卡奖或者是媲美这个艾美奖。好，那我们再回来看这个句子开头啊 ，as 就是随着这个 idea for an awards ceremony， 好，他们就是觉得要有一个颁奖典礼这样的一个想法。好，那这个颁奖典礼是什么样的颁奖典礼呢？是一个 award ceremony celebrating music， 是用来庆祝音乐的，或者是这个表扬音乐的这样一个颁奖典礼。那这个 idea 怎么样呢？ became more popular， 就是越来越多人觉得对吼，应该要这样做哦。那这样子的时候呢，那 influential people 就是有影响力的人 in the industry， 就是这个唱片或者是录音业界有影响力的人就开始怎么样 considering 考虑要找一个 a catchy name 啊，那能够媲美这个奥斯卡奖，可以媲美这个艾美奖。
An early favorite was the Eddies, in honor of the inventor of the phonograph, Thomas Edison. So they were going to call it Eddie for Edison. And remember, the phonograph is the one with the circular wax. The cylinder-shaped one.
Yeah. 好，所以呢，这个地方他讲到一个 an early favorite， 就是早期大家很喜欢的一个名字，叫做 Eddies。那 in honor of 就是纪念，它是要纪念这个 the inventor of the phonograph， 就是纪念留声机的发明人，就是爱迪生。
However, the organizers eventually chose the Grammys. After a long time, eventually, they decided on Grammys, after the invention of the Gramophone by Emil Berliner. And the reason for this is the Gramophone was the one that took off. It was the dominant technology at the time. It was the technology everyone used. So it made more sense to name it after the technology.
好，但是呢 however, the organizers 就是这些筹备的人呢 eventually 就是经过一段蛮长的时间之后，他们最后选的是这个 the Grammys。那为什么呢？这个是什么时候的事情呢？是 after， 就在什么之后？在这个 the invention of， 在这个东西的发明之后。什么东西呢？就是唱盘式留声机的发明之后啊，他们觉得还是要选这一个，而且他们选的是这个唱盘式留声机的发明人啊，他是被谁发明呢？被这Emil Berliner 啊，被他发明啊，所以他们就我们就还是选这个 Grammy 这个字啊 Grammys。
Now the inaugural Grammy Awards, inaugural means the very first ones.They took place on May 4th, 1959 in Los Angeles and New York City, because both places are centers of the music industry, and they probably were like, okay, both, to solve the fight.
Yeah, 因为这个洛杉矶跟纽约都是这个音乐这个行业非常重要的地方，所以第一届呢在两个地方都有办这个艾美奖。好，所以 inaugural 就是首次的 开始的啊，就像我们讲登基啊、就职啊，都是用这一个字。所以第一次的这葛莱美奖呢 took place 在哪里发生，或者在哪里举行呢？在这个在哪一个时间举行呢？在1959年的5月4日举行，在纽约跟这个洛杉矶。
Now, the following year, the ceremony was broadcast on television around the nation.
好，那 the following year 就是1960年呢，这个典礼 was broadcast 就是转播啊 on television 就是在电视上转播 around the nation 是全国，所以换句话说就是全国电视转播。第二年的典礼是全国电视都有转播。
Now, since then, Los Angeles has hosted the most events, so Los Angeles has been where it's been held most of the time, followed by New York City. So New York City is the second most often. And then other places like Nashville and Chicago, because Nashville and Chicago are also centers for various music scenes.
好，那接下来呢 since then 从那个时候开始，也就是从第二届开始的，应该是说从第三届开始了啊。那这个洛杉矶呢 has hosted 它主办了 the most events 就是最多次的这个格莱美奖的这个活动 events 就是那个颁奖典礼那个活动。然后 followed by 意思是其次的意思，其次是纽约市，还有其他的地方啊，例如说这个 Nashville 或者是Chicago。
Well, the first ceremony handed out fewer than 30 awards, so they didn't give very many awards the very first ceremony. However, the number grew to well over 100. If you say over 100, it could mean like 102, 104, but well over 100 implies something like 120, 130.
OK， 好，所以我们看到说这个 while 在这里做多对比哈，这个一方面呢，当然你也可以把它理解成为虽然哈，但是我觉得这个地方你就把它想的是个对比哈。那在对比什么呢？第一次的颁奖典礼呢 handed out 它颁发出了 fewer than 就是不到，第一届颁出的奖不到30个，但是呢 the number 就是这个奖杯的数字啊 grew 成长 to 到什么程度呢？Well over 就是远超过，然后 well 用来修饰那个 over 就是表示远的意思。好，所以第一届颁出来奖不到30个，但是这个数字不断的成长啊，然后呢，到2000年的时候，或者是到了21世纪的时候呢，它是远远的超过100个奖项了。
In the past decade, however, in the last 10 years, an average of 83 trophies have been awarded each year. I think they thought that well over 100 trophies was a little bit tiring.
好，所以呢，在过去的10年，那 an average of 就是平均，好，所以平均呢是83个奖项 has been awarded each year， 每年大概平均颁发83个奖项啊，他们可能觉得超过100个奖项好像太多了一点啊，那会不会另外一方面可能跟这个唱片业的兴衰也许也有一点关系？Yeah.
So similar to actors, directors, producers, and screenwriters, these are all roles in the movie industry who are awarded Oscars, so they're given Oscars for their outstanding work. Winning a Grammy is a huge honor for the recipient, ensuring a bright future in the music industry. So by getting this honor, your future is assured or ensured. Everybody now knows, she's the one to watch.
好，所以呢 similar to 就是和什么什么类似差不多。好，所以和这些演员、导演、制片家，还有这个 screenwriters 就是编剧差不多的。那这些人都是怎么样？都是在 awarded， 他们都被颁发给了这个奥斯卡奖啊。所以跟换句话说，得到奥斯卡奖的这些啊，这个演员啊、导演啊、制片人，还有这个编剧一样，那得到一个格莱美奖 is a huge honor for the recipient. Recipient 就是得奖者，所以这是对得奖者来讲是一个很大的荣耀。然后呢 ensuring 就是可以保证以后某件事情会发生，所以它保证什么可以发生呢？得到这个奖就可以保证一个 bright future， 一个光明美好的未来。好 in the music industry 在音乐界。
Okay, so what did you learn from this article? Let's look at the box at the bottom of the page. And our first question is, what does the trophy of the Grammys look like?
好，所以呢，这个格莱美奖的奖杯看起来像什么呢？
And basically, it looks like an old-fashioned record player because it was the most common record player of its time. But that one is called a gramophone.
好，所以它看起来像个 old-fashioned 老式的一个唱机，好，那称为这个唱盘式留声机 Gramophone。
And number 2, when did people start to watch the Grammys on TV?
好，大家是什么时候开始在电视上看到格莱美奖的呢？
And the answer is in 1960.
答案是1960年。
Okay, that's all we have for you on the Grammys, but please join us again tomorrow for more Ivy English. Until then,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.